Genesis 1:26b says, "And let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." Man from the beginning was meant to have dominion over creation, all the creatures and all the earth. However, these rulers of the earth, Adam and Eve, sinned against God, in part because Eve heeded a deceitful serpent, an animal over which they were wisely and righteously to rule. Because of the sin of Adam, the ground was cursed, or Arura ha'adamah. Cursed is the ground because of Adam's sin. The Adamah was cursed in Genesis 3:17. And it would produce thorns, in the Greek akanthas, and thistles. After this sinful failure, man would be exiled from the beautiful garden which the Lord had planted, and would continue to sin so much so that a flood of judgment became necessary to properly punish such violent and incessantly evil people. Genesis 6:13. Even after the flood, man continued to fall far short of the godly, obedient dominion God wanted them to have. At the Tower of Babel, for example, man refused to spread out across the earth over which they were to rule, and instead pridefully remained in one place and tried to exalt and make a name for themselves. Genesis 11:4. Again and again, man would not exercise godly dominion over the earth, but instead chose pride, sin, and selfishness. Throughout the pages of Scripture, though, we see glimpses of the kind of dominion man was meant to have. Notably, Noah, a blameless man in his generation who walked with God, became the guardian of every living creature of the earth, keeping them safe with his family in the ark. Abraham journeyed across the land in faithful obedience to God. God, through Joseph, saved all the earth, kol haaretz, Genesis 41:57, from famine through Joseph's wise and faith-filled administration of the grain of Egypt, believing in and acting on the God-given interpretations of Pharaoh's dreams of feast and famine. However, none of these figures, nor even Moses, Samuel, David, Solomon, or the prophets, would meet the measure of the one man, Jesus Christ, who exercised dominion perfectly, without sin, obeying God and blessing others. Jesus multiplied and provided bread and fish for the hungry, walked on the waters as God's Spirit had hovered over them at the beginning of creation, faithfully followed God everywhere he would have him to go, even to Jerusalem and to Golgotha, outside the city, where he provided salvation for all people. This Lord, who wore the crown of thorns, stephanon exakanthon, Matthew 27:29, from the same Greek root used in the Septuagint Genesis 3:18. Adam sinned, and the earth over which he was to rule was cursed to produce thorns. Jesus, the last Adam, 1 Corinthians 15:45, obeyed God and wore the crown of thorns that should have been set on our heads. Because of Jesus' obedience, far from being exiled from Eden, he has been given the name above every name, Philippians 2:9, and everything in God's cosmos has been set under his feet, 1 Corinthians 15:27, quoting Psalm 8, which says in part, "You make him to rule over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, and the fish of the sea." In fact, Jesus has dominion over all creation, visible and invisible. He is the man who is the perfect Lord, the Prince of Peace. Look to Jesus for the perfect example of godly, humble, obedient dominion, and submit to his leadership in all things, for he is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords who rules over the cosmos.